Our genes do not determine our destiny. Today, Dr. Shad Marvasti is our guest, and we're going to learn about medicine, but food as medicine. We're going to learn about longevity. He has a concept called the dress code. He's going to unwrap that. But most important today, everybody, we're going to challenge today's healthcare system with this brilliant man. So welcome to Difference Talks. Shad, will you share a little bit of your background, and then we're diving in.
Sounds great, Barry. Thank you so much for having me here. So my background, I actually started out as a philosophy major and was really interested in the question of the philosophy of medicine and science and why this idea of what is considered to be good medicine changes over time. I grew up with this traditions from the old Silk Road, being Persian, from the old Silk Road of India, Persian, and in China, we always had this concept of food as medicine that's been around for thousands of years. And I wondered to myself, is this still applicable to the diseases of our time? Because medicine doesn't really focus primarily on food as medicine. It focuses on medications and surgery. And that really prompted me to do research in these areas, which led me to a number of different institutions like Stanford University, the National Institutes of Health, and eventually down the path of medical school with the idea that I wanted to redefine how we approach healthcare, to really understand the root causes of these conditions and how they connect to our diet and lifestyle.
Well, what I find very, very common today is that in healthcare, it's kind of like an ER. People go there because they're ill, because they're injured, and then they are prescribed something. Very little of today's healthcare focuses on preventing us from having to go to the ER or preventing us from having to have that heart operation. And you're really deeply believing in that kind of a concept. You just created a book on longevity, and it's called Longevity Made Simple. And it's really a fascinating book. I'm going to ask you about one aspect that many times is never covered by the physician, and that is one of the key focuses, and you have this as part of your dress code, DRESS, is relationships. Shad, where do relationships play a role in our health?
Relationships actually play a key role, which has been underemphasized and really not recognized as much in the past. Now that we understand the science of epigenetics, epi being above and beyond our genes, we all know about the genes that we inherit from our biological parents. But epigenetics is basically the inputs that turn on or off certain groups of genes. So basically, changing gene expression. And one of the components of these what we call epigenetic inputs that can change gene expression for better or for worse, are relationships. The better is when we're able to have authentic, meaningful relationships. These actually turn on protective genes that keep us healthier for longer. And a number of studies have shown this. There's a big, well-known study from Harvard University, which looked at graduates for over 50 years and found that the single best predictor of health and happiness, better than our cholesterol level, was in later in life, right? The single best predictor of health and happiness was whether or not we had an authentic, meaningful relationship in our life. And these relationships don't have to be necessarily romantic. They can be. Marriage is shown to be protective, particularly a healthy marriage with a healthy relationship. Or it could also be close friends. And we see this in places like Okinawa, Japan, which is a blue zone, right? Where people live healthier for longer, where there's these moais or groups of friends that have known each other from childhood, and they're there and supporting each other and connecting with each other regularly. The opposite is also true, and we saw this during the pandemic. Loneliness, right, can be the negative epigenetic input. That's the other side of the relationship coin. So being socially isolated is an independent risk factor for dementia, for heart attacks and stroke. And so it's become very similar to smoking, like a pack of cigarettes a day, in terms of risks that come from it. So being socially isolated and not having those relationships is actually a risk factor for premature disease and death, which is why it's so important for us to invest in these meaningful, authentic relationships as a means of improving our health and longevity.
Can you run down the dress code that you have in your book, Longevity Made Simple, and maybe go through it relatively quickly, but then we may want to focus on a few of those because this book is about older people. It's also for younger people. It's to keep us healthy. Because one thing that's so important today when we talk about longevity, it's not how long you live, it's how healthy you are as you live long. So, Dr. Shad, can you go through the dress code for us?
Yes, absolutely. So, DRESS stands for diet, relationships, exercise, stress, and sleep. So each of these are epigenetic inputs basically that, are the core of longevity, and not just living, adding years to your life, but adding life to your years, right? So which is why, the title of the book is Longevity Made Simple, living healthier for longer with the dress code. So if we're able to hone in and optimize these inputs, which are really things that are in our control, our diet, our relationships, our exercise, how we manage stress, how we optimize sleep, then we are really getting to the majority of what we need to achieve a healthier, longer life. What makes it unique is that we're bringing together worlds that have been kind of parallel but not working together. So there's been the wellness industry, and more recently this longevity, industry that's kind of developing, and a lot of these things kind of happen in parallel outside of traditional healthcare settings. So what we're doing is we are actually bringing these worlds together in a way that's very unique because we want to make it accessible to a wide range of the population. We want to make it scalable in the setting of a healthcare system so that it's not something where you have to go outside and on your own or look at some kind of trend on TikTok and try to make your best guess to say, oh, maybe I should take this supplement or I should start doing cold plunges, and that's the answer. We want to make it simple, and we want to be able to bring that expertise within your healthcare system so that we can actually provide a place, both a brick and mortar place, which we're building a flagship site for this, which has all these components, as well as a variety of virtual programs and services across all of the different fields that Honor Health provides, across oncology, gastroenterology, cardiology, neurology, primary care. And that flagship site that we're building is going to have a lot of things all together in one place. We'll have a medical fitness program where people can actually exercise. Will be like a pool. There'll be a basketball court. There'll be exercise physiologists and trainers to help people meet their health goals and do health assessments. We'll have a teaching kitchen where people can actually learn how to cook and prepare meals and work with a chef educator and a registered dietitian to use food as medicine. We'll even bring in a medical spa where we can actually have those components in the spa industry like massage, acupuncture, cold plunges, red light therapy, things that are evidence-based that work, and integrate them into your healthcare services, and even bring in retail where we offer vetted supplements, right? So there, we take the mystery out of, is this the right supplement for me? Is it safe with the medications I'm taking? Is it going to be effective? Is it a good option for me? Is it safe? All of those different things. So we're really trying to bring all of it together in one place.
It's really fascinating. I have visited this location, and it is pretty much amazing because you have everything there. And what I find also interesting is you're bringing in specialties there. So if somebody has some cardio issues or whatever, they will be able to talk to an expert, which I think is extraordinary. Question for you here. One thing that is so rampant here in our society is meds, is taking pills to go solve a problem. And in the second half of our podcast, we're going to focus on young folks, how can they stay healthy, and then older folks, how can they stay healthy. But a question that's across both spectrums is meds, pills, etc. Where do you stand on that in our society today, Dr. Shad? And is there something we can do or something that we can all be more aware of that could help our health in the long run?
That's a great question. 2/3 of every doctor's visit in the United States results in a medication prescription. And I would offer that that's probably too much, because we quickly reach for the prescription before looking at prescribing things like food or exercise as medicine. My mentor, Dr. Andrew Weil, who wrote the foreword to my book, is a well-known best-selling author and really kind of the father of integrative medicine. One of his more recent books was actually Mind Over Meds, where he talked about the dangers of excess medications. These medications don't come without side effects. Very common medications like proton pump inhibitors, for example, for acid reflux, over time can increase your risk for pneumonia, osteoporosis, B12 deficiency, magnesium deficiency. And so it's actually really important, even though medications can be life-saving, that we want to focus on maximizing lifestyle changes, which give your body the best ability to heal itself so that we can minimize medication. So a lot of the work that we do in integrative and lifestyle medicine is to help you maximize the role that these epigenetic inputs, like I mentioned, the dress code, the diet, relationships, exercise, stress, and sleep. We want to optimize these. And when we optimize these, if you have high blood pressure, if you have high cholesterol, you're on 2 or 3 different medications, as you're making these changes, you're addressing the root causes of these risk factors. And so what we start doing is de-prescribing, and we start to decrease medication. So integrative approaches is, I'm not opposed to medication. Medication can be life-saving and critical, but I want to minimize medication by maximizing lifestyle, right? Because it doesn't come without a side effect, and it doesn't come without a danger. And in many cases, we can wean down or wean off of medication for a lot of people if we're maximizing these dress code inputs.
I met with a doctor out of the East Coast who worked with patients who had dementia. And one of the things he talked about, Dr. Shad, was very, very much in sync with you. He said he would routinely bring a patient in and find out they were on 10, 20, 30 different meds. And one of his goals was to demedicate them safely over time. And he found that in many cases, as they started to exercise and connect with people, they healed. They were better. They were smarter. They actually, in some cases, no longer had dementia as we would know it. So what you're talking about is so critical. It's easy to take the med. It seems more difficult to change the lifestyle.
That's true. It seems more difficult, but in the long run, and if you actually have the guidance that you need, and you have tailored advice and kind of precise approach to this, it really has a lasting impact. And in the book, I share a number of case studies, from the patients that I've worked with over the years, where we've seen great success in taking this approach.
Well, when we come back for our second half, we're going to talk to Dr. Shad on a few other issues, including sleep, age-related focus, etc. So thank you, Dr. Shad. We'll be right back on Difference Talks.
Difference Talks is a LaBeouf production. Our focus is differentiation, and we believe it's more important than ever to differentiate your brand and experience. Contact us at labeouf.com for a conversation. We'd love to connect with you.
Welcome back to Difference Talks with Dr. Shad Marvasti. We have a question for you, Dr. Shad. Genetics. I've been brought up with this assumption, so please blow it out of the water because our audience would love it. If I am genetically disposed to a disease or a certain type of issue, I have been brought up thinking, well, that's pretty much it. There's not much I can do. Tell me the truth about that.
The truth is there's a lot more that you can do than you think. And when it comes to the chronic diseases of our time, the majority of folks are suffering from, like diabetes, cancers, many cancers, heart disease, obesity, even dementias. They are really directly linked to how we live our life, where we live, right? And actually our zip code is more impactful than our genetic code at determining outcomes for these. Now, there's obviously some conditions that, are outside of those chronic conditions, which are very strongly genetic. And even in those cases, we can optimize our outcomes by making these lifestyle changes. And so the genes are really not our destiny. I definitely see so many people impacted by, again, heart disease or diabetes. And they talk about, oh, there's heart attacks and strokes in my family. I have diabetes that runs my family, and people have lost their eyesight, they've lost their kidneys, they've lost a lower limb, all these things, and they feel like, oh, I'm fated to have that happen to me, and that's just not true. You may have a risk for it, right? But it really, the destiny is really in your hands in terms of determining whether or not you actually get the disease and for it to progress. And I think that is something that's really empowering. It's not something that, it's kind of like a fait accompli that like it's done. We actually have the power to make change ourselves.
I'd like you to go into something, you said it's brilliant, but I think it's more than brilliant. I think it's hard to believe, but true. What about your zip code? How does your zip code affect your health?
Your zip code is critical because it's basically all the components of everything around you, where you work, where you play, where you live. These all provide these epigenetic inputs, right? Because your zip code determines what access you have to healthy food, recreational facilities. Are you socially isolated? Are you able to connect with other people? How much stress are you exposed to and impacted by? And whether or not it's a safe environment, are you able to have all those components of a healthy lifestyle? And so whether or not you're at a place where you can get that in a positive way, or unfortunately in a number of cases in a negative way, that becomes a big detriment and deterrent to health, much more than just the genes that you've inherited.
Please talk about sleep. I don't know anybody who says they sleep just beautifully every night. What's the importance of sleep? Are there any guidelines you can share with our audience to help us sleep a little better?
Yes, sleep is critically important. For a variety of things. It's the phase of life where we're restoring, clearing out those harmful toxic proteins. We're now seeing very strong associations where if you have poor quality sleep, not only quality but quantity of sleep, you have an increased risk for dementia, increased risk for heart attacks and strokes. A lot of these premature causes of death really come from lack of adequate sleep over time, and even certain cancers are linked to chronic insomnia and lack of sleep. One of the some of the key components of getting good sleep are being able to be active during the day, so actually having physical activity, not 3 hours before bedtime. About 3 to 4 hours before bedtime is not the time for you to exercise. Any other time during the day is great. Getting exposure to real sunlight early in the day for about 15 to 20 minutes sets your circadian rhythm, and then basically allows your body to go through the process of the day, and at the right time begins secreting melatonin at night. So the sooner you do that in the morning, the sooner you're going to get to that in the evening. And then being able to eliminate exposure to bright lights and blue lights, particularly from screens, which suppress our melatonin levels. And then having a consistent schedule. Our body really thrives on consistency. So having a set wake up time, not spending time in bed where you're not asleep, as much as possible. If you wake up and you can't go back to bed, get out of bed, because that should be the place where you're sleeping. And then having a set bedtime every night. And, it may not be easy to do the first few days, but if you start actually, trying to get to a consistent timing on these, your body will adjust to that. What we call good sleep hygiene. And you can look this up, and there's a lot of guidelines around this in terms of all the habits and rituals to basically set us up for success when it comes to sleep.
Now, what about supplements? You mentioned them a little bit. We are bombarded with ads on, hey, here's a supplement. Hey, here's this. Hey, I just read that this is great for me. I need more iron. I need more B. I need this or that. How do we best look at supplements, Dr. Shad? Because, and I'll toss this over to you after this, I may need something different than somebody else, yet we are all, in many cases, listening to a pitch and saying, you know what, that's what I need. What should we be doing?
So we really want to consult an expert, and those of us who are trained in integrative medicine, we do 1,000+ hour fellowship where we learn about dietary supplements, what's safe, what's dangerous, what can interact negatively with the medications you're on, and what can be really effective. Supplements can be very useful. Certain supplements like high quality like turmeric supplement or curcumin supplement is equivalent to ibuprofen for treating arthritis symptoms, as an example, without the side effects of raising your blood pressure or increasing a risk for ulcers, which all NSAIDs like ibuprofen can do. But the problem is that most supplements are not regulated in the same way as our medications are regulated. And that's a fault with our policy in terms of what we call nutraceuticals in the United States. And the hope is at some point they will be regulated. Some countries like Germany, for example, had a Commission E standard where all of their supplements are actually regulated just like their pharmaceutical medications are. In lieu of that, we have to depend on knowledge of certain companies that have certain standards and some third-party testing that's being done with some groups, like Consumer Lab Reports is one of the groups where people can get memberships and you can see they do independent testing of these supplements. So going to an integrated medicine doctor who has this knowledge and can help to say, okay, I want you to take this particular brand. So whenever I give a supplement recommendation, I don't just say, you should take vitamin D, you should take B12, or you should take whatever. I give the actual brand and the dosage, which I know is reliable and useful. I also use a database where we actually look specifically at drug, herb, and supplement interactions. So I put all of your medications in there. I put all the potential supplements that you're either taking or I'm considering recommending for you, and then see what interactions there are to make sure that something is not dangerous and it can actually be safe. And then I kind of look at what's effective and what your options are.
And I would assume you would have your patients undergo a blood lab to make sure you understood what they needed, if they had deficiencies, as an example.
There's micronutrient testing we do, but also just checking basic kidney and liver function. So a lot of, any medication or supplement usually gets processed in some combination by the liver or the kidneys. And so even once we start a certain supplement regimen, with a medication or however it's set up for you, we definitely want to periodically check your kidney and liver function because we want to make sure that you're not overwhelming those with what you're taking.
The future of medicine regarding AI, where do you see that, doctor?
I think AI is going to have many different applications. I think it's going to streamline our processes for work. Ambient AI will help with how we document, medical documentation of notes. I think it'll optimize kind of triaging and how we're approaching certain problems to kind of tee things up and extend the ability of the physician to do more and more access to healthcare. It's not going to replace physicians because you're still going to need that human connection, but also like the human judgment call. But I think it can give a lot more resources and accessibility to care in ways that we don't see right now. And it can also reorganize kind of our approach to things to make things a lot more streamlined and efficient than they are currently.
I promised that we would focus on two groups, and obviously there are more than those, but two groups, the young and the not so young. Have in our audience thousands of individuals that are 20 to 35 years old. How can they best safeguard their health so that they not just survive and live a few more decades, but they're actually robust and positioning themselves for a healthy, full life?
What I would say is that what you do today pays dividends for tomorrow. So in the same way as you want to be financially responsible in terms of how you invest your money and think about your future in terms of savings and, wise investments, it's the same with our bodies. So if we're investing in our bodies, thinking about it the same way we might be financially investing for our portfolio in the future, we're doing all the lifestyle things we're doing now so that we are continuing to get those dividends 20, 30, 40, 50 years down the road, where we're not just surviving in and out of the hospital with a chronic disease, but we're thriving and being able to live our best life for longer. So what you put in is what you really get out on the other end.
Now, for the older folks, 60, 70, 80 plus, what is your advice for them?
It's never too late. I've had folks in their 70s who've had type 2 diabetes for over 20 years and been on insulin and multiple medications, having challenges with wound healing, fatigue, and then they make shifts in their diet and their lifestyle and these dress code inputs, and with a matter of months, their blood sugar comes down, their insulin resistance reverses to a certain extent, and we're able to cut their medications by 40% or more, and suddenly the cuts and the bruises that would take weeks to heal within 1 or 2 days, energy levels return. And so I think that people need to recognize that even in that situation, where a lot of times you'll just go to someone who's, conventionally trained doctor who's not really looking at the bigger picture, they'll just say, well, there's nothing else I can do for you. It's just not true. The body has the ability to heal itself at any age to a certain extent, and we need to give ourselves that best chance to do it. So if we make those changes, even in those decades, we're going to be able to see it pay off pretty quickly.
Food as medicine is one of your mantras, and you run an institute at the University of Arizona focused on that. Tell us what food as medicine should mean to us.
Yeah, well, diet is the number one risk factor for premature preventable disease in the United States and around the world. Yet, physicians get around 19 hours of nutrition education across all 4 years of medical education. And we rarely prescribe food as medicine. So now that's changing. We're finally starting to see that we need to learn about food as medicine, which is one of the focus areas of my career. Has been redesigning medical education to empower future physicians and trainees to basically learn how to use this and give their patients the guidance they need on this, which is why I started the culinary medicine program at the University of Arizona. And the way I see this building out is through laboratories and community settings. In the same way as we have anatomy labs where we learn about the body, we need to have teaching kitchens everywhere where people can actually learn how to cook and prepare healthy meals. And this skill is a critical skill. Some of us may remember there was a time we had home economics where people learned how to cook in school. we need to bring those skills back, because that's where we can really use food as medicine, particularly when you look at the standard American diet, which is sad. It's 70% processed food, or what I call frankenfoods. It's not real food. It's something that's ready, available, and it's just, it's a food-like substances that masquerades as food. And it has all these flavors, but it has no nutrients. And so really, food as medicine is returning to real food, actual real food with ingredients that you can understand, and being able to use and prepare them and cook them at home, and be able to use that as a way of building relationships within your family and your friends network, right? There's nothing better than sharing a meal with someone that you care about to engender those connections, which again reinforces another one of those dress code inputs, which is relationships.
And the final question I'm going to ask is for you personally, Dr. Shad. You work with hundreds, if not thousands, of patients, and you work with healthcare professionals every day. What is your best day when you're energized? You feel more excited as you are driving home, and it's something that you think, I just hope tomorrow's that way as well.
Well, it's a combination of things. I think on an individual patient level, when I actually see a patient get excited and see that they have the power to take their destiny within their own hands, and I'm able to see them make those changes, and the numbers improve, their energy improves, their focus improves, and they're happier, that excites me. And at a system level, when I'm actually starting to move the needle on building the infrastructure and the ecosystem, which provides more services and more accessibility for patients and community members to be able to learn these skills, and for healthcare to actually make that shift to more of an upstream approach where we're actually looking at prevention, we're looking at longevity, and I'm actually building those tools and those systems in place. And also on the healthcare education side as well, where I can see future physicians and I'm training to see that difference in their mindset, where they're open to it. Those are things that excite me. When I go home, I think, wow, we're making steps, we're making strides to change things, to make that transformation, and it's moving forward.
How can any of us in the audience learn a little more beyond the fact that I highly recommend Longevity Made Simple, your book, which can be bought anywhere. It could be at Target, it could be at Amazon. Where could people reach out to learn more, either from you or at a location that you would like them to learn more about?
Yeah, so I think, my website is available, drshad.com, spelled out drshad.com is one, and then really our Honor Health Whole Health Institute, where we share the vision that we're building and the services that are accessible for people to connect with.
Dr. Shad, thank you. You're changing the lives of thousands of people. You're opening our minds. And we're realizing that, genetics don't just guide our life. We can guide our life and we can make a difference. But it also means we have to listen to brilliant, sincere, genuine people like you. So thank you so much for your contribution. Everybody, this has been a wonderful episode of Difference Talks. Please follow Dr. Shad, and thank you, Dr. Shad.
Thank you very much, Barry. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us on Difference Talks. All of us at LaBeouf are proud to celebrate great people with inspiring messages. Difference Talks was created, produced, engineered, and performed by the LaBeouf team. Even the music is original. Contact us at labeouf.com to learn how to differentiate your brand and give your team a sense of significance and meaning.